Hey everybody, talking today about student loans. So we're hearing a lot about this in the news, different places reporting on the challenges of student loans. For years, of course, they've been deferred through COVID, et cetera. People that had student loan payments to be made, they were able to defer those or not make those during that crisis period. That's all ending here soon. And so there's been a lot of talk about what is that going to mean for the economy, for the borrowers, et cetera. There's just a lot of issues to be dealt with here. And so I think the issue is there's over $1 trillion in student loan debt. People have taken on massive amounts of debt for both undergraduate and graduate school. As we run calculations for a lot of our clients as they're looking to pay for college and what their family can afford, in many cases, a lot of the students are reaching for schools that are outside the family's budget. And so inevitably that requires some debt to cover those obligations, and that can take the form of federal student loans or private student loans, but nonetheless people are coming out with a debt burden. And so when you first start your careers, I've seen my 4 kids all launch into their careers from varying degrees, having a debt overhang to go along with the high rents and all the other expenses that are out there, especially with the burgeoning inflation, makes it very, very difficult to get started. And so what you're seeing is a population that's coming out of school with limited earning potential because they have limited work experience, and now all of a sudden they have $200,000, $300,000 student loan. And so as those are coming due, a lot of people are becoming concerned now that they're coming back into the fray, having to make those payments. What's going to happen? And so it's created some maybes around what's going to happen with the economy. The millennials, which is primarily the group that we're talking about that's in their 20s and early 30s, are coming out of graduate school, becoming doctors. They're a huge part of our economic growth because they are consumers, and that's what makes the American economy move. So if they're consuming goods and services, in particular buying homes, because think of all the things that you need when you first purchase a home: the washers, the dryers, the blinds, all the trips to the Home Depots, et cetera, to take care of all the things that go along with that. It creates a whole cycle of consumption. And so if someone's waiting to do that longer or had to pay rent for a number of years before that because they can't afford a house payment, that slows the economy down. You couple all of this then with higher interest rates. So people that were looking 2 years ago for a home in the $300,000 range at 3% are now looking at a $350,000 house at 7.5%, and that dramatically changes their payment. Well, just like a student loan payment, you add in a higher house payment, that makes everybody have to wait, reevaluate, all of those kind of things. So really a few different issues here to consider. And so reduced purchasing power. Obviously, if more money's going to debt, you can't buy things to keep the economy moving. It's going to servicing that debt. They're not going to be able to save for retirement quite as much. So if the $1,000 is going into a student loan repayment, then obviously they can't add that to their 401k or their Roth IRAs. It could create higher unemployment because the millennials, most young generations, tend to be our entrepreneurs, the ones that are going to take the risk to start a business, and that's where a lot of job creation comes from. So it could create kind of an unemployment vacuum of sorts as these folks are having to wait longer because you don't want to start a business when you've got a big debt overhang. I already talked a little bit about this with economic growth. If the consumption numbers aren't moving, then yes, you could have a challenge to economic growth. And of course, delinquencies. And so I was kind of curious as to what happens when people actually do default or don't make their student loan payments, because I'm seeing in the press now a lot of folks saying we're just not going to pay. I know they're being resumed, but I'm not going to do it. And so what happens? Well, you can see there's a lot of impacts from people that have already gone through defaults based on this study. And so credit scores obviously get harmed in a lot of ways. There can be collection fees. If they want a tax refund and they still owe money on a federal debt, that can be impeded. If they want to go back to school and get future financial aid, that can also be affected. And then, of course, wage garnishments on private student loans where the borrower will actually, or the lender, excuse me, will go after the borrower through garnishing their wages to get repayment that way. And then student loans are not something that can be taken through bankruptcy. So it's not as if this can be escaped like something like a business debt or a medical debt, those kind of things that are available for bankruptcy relief. So it's just going to be interesting to see what happens in this landscape. And so, yeah, deep thoughts with Matt Moline. I do think this is going to wear on the economy. I think there's going to be a lot of back and forth politically about how to deal with this issue, especially on the federal student loan side, as to how those will be better managed. I think everyone needs to take a hard look at what they're spending on education before they get to that university or that school. A lot of folks are going to college overpaying, paying more than they need to, or than what's necessary perhaps for the degree that they're looking for. A lot of these colleges, frankly, are overpriced, and it's just based on supply and demand. They can get high tuition rates at Harvard because they're Harvard, but many of us can go to a private liberal arts school and do just as well, or get a comparable degree for that. So being a wise shopper for college, I think, is a great way to defray student loan debt. I also think everyone needs to take a hard look at where the university's responsibilities are in this. And if they are building these massive endowments, but their students are coming out without a marketable degree, are they really serving those kids? So again, a few deep thoughts on my end, but we'll be interested to see how the student loan drama plays out, and I'll be watching along with all of you. Thanks so much.